Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Harvard India Conference. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Harvard India Conference, co hosted by the students of the Harvard Kennedy School and Harvard Business School, is one of the largest student run conferences in the United States, focusing on India centric issues and one of the world's leading forums for dialogue, debate, and networking around issues pertinent to contemporary India. Before starting today's discussion, I would like to briefly go over some housekeeping items. We'll start with a 45-minute intra-panel discussion followed by 15 minutes of audience Q&A. We value audience engagement more than anything, and we hope you will use this time to further probe the arguments made by our speakers. Please use the Q&A function you see on your screen to post your questions. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists for the day. Mr. Chandraban Prasad is an Indian journalist, writer, activist, and political commentator. A Delhi based Dalit ideologue and the author of the Bhopal document, he advocates for Dalits' advocate share in government procurements, brings out a monthly journal, Dalit Enterprise, that profiles Dalit entrepreneurs and sees Dalit capitalism as a self respect movement. Mr. Prasad has also been a visiting scholar with the University of Pennsylvania and a former member of the Board of Governors at IIM Lucknow. Mr. Arun Kobragade is a 28-year veteran of the Indian corporate ecosystem. He currently serves as the CEO of BioCare India Private Limited, a principal consultant at Raksh Consultancy, and a promoter at RAS Frozen Foods. A metallurgical engineer from NIT Nagpur and an MBA from IIM Calcutta, Arun is a champion of entrepreneurship for the SC/ST community. He is the chairman of Baba Sahib Ambedkar Social Innovation Council, writes for multiple news dailies about the socio-economic problems of the Dalits. Since 2010, as a policy analyst, Arun has also been instrumental in bringing about new policies in both central and state governments for promoting Dalit entrepreneurship. Ms. Nageshwari Cherukonda, for the last 3 years, has served as the president of Sigma Intel, an IT solutions and cybersecurity firm with headquarters in Illinois, USA. An MBA from IIM Calcutta, she previously served in senior leadership positions at Red Elephant Products and Viable Systems. She worked at Air India before making her way to the US. Dr. Suraj Yengre, our moderator for this panel, is one of India's leading scholars and public intellectuals. The author of the bestseller Caste Matters and co-editor of the award-winning anthology The Radical in Ambedkar, Suraj is currently a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School and part of the founding team of Initiative for Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability at Harvard University. Suraj is also an activist in the transnational movement of Dalit rights, a co-convener of Dalit Black Lives Matter Symposium and the Dalit and Black Power movement, and a convener of the Dalit Film Festival and India for Diversity movement. I will now invite him to lead us through the rest of the event. Over to you, Suraj.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nishkam Prabodh. I think we should all give him an applause for not only crossing the extreme barriers, but also jumping through the immense hoops. He's one of us, probably the first Dalit to enter Harvard Business School. And eventually, maybe 2 years later, he'll be the first Dalit to graduate. So I think that's a enormous potential right there. And in a way, Nishkam has inspired many by just getting into the school, and many that will follow will minutely uh, watch the footsteps of Nishkam as he remains the pioneer. Talking about pioneers on this panel, I am more honored to be amongst this amazing pioneers who have crafted their skills and performed their abilities with an attitude of social service, but not only that limiting their potential to a specific field, but have diversified like a high flying hawk. And so I'm excellently, very, very honored. Let's have a conversation. The topic for today is caste in business. And this has been a conversation that I have had this conversation with three of you individually. And one of the ways was, why don't we all come together and brainstorm the ideas? The purpose of this, of course, conversation is to not only channel a certain critique about the casteism, but also try to find ways that are existing. What do we do now that the structure we have? India Conference never had caste-based conversation until 3 years ago when I took over some of the responsibilities. And so we have had conversation on caste in judiciary, caste in media, caste in cinema, and so forth. And today, what we're going to do is continue the same theme of caste in business. So I'll ask you all individual questions, and then of course towards the end we'll have a Q&A. So let's begin with Chandrabhan Prasad. Uh, 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 Brother Chandrabhan, you have been advocating for an ideology of Dalit capitalism. And I think many friends have supported that, but also there are many people who have refused to endorse that. Now you understand both sides because you are not someone who just woke up and chose to be a Dalit capitalist. You have been on the left side. You have been on the side of what we saw liberal bent and also today in a capitalist sense. Why do you think capitalism is an antidote or a suggestive idea for eradicating caste?
Well, what I have seen in my life, that capitalism makes social markers irrelevant. For instance, if you are a Brahmin without a smartphone, then what kind of Brahmin you are? So, most prominently post economic reforms, Dalits' access to market has gone up beyond imagination. And that's the reason I believe that, and Dalits have, most of the Dalit businesses we have surveyed, examined, are post 1990, not before. I'll just give one example. Professor Arun Kobragade is also one of the editors. We have just published this 100 Dalit-owned hospitals in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab. 100 Dalit-owned hospitals. The book came out 5 days back. To my mind, there are 500 Dalit-owned hospitals in northern India. And there are hospitals, for instance, in Uttarakhand, Haldwani, a Dalit-owned hospital, first generation Dalit doctor, is a 200-bedded hospital, and he has 400 employees. And he employs upper caste doctors as well. There is a hospital in Hapur nearby Delhi, that is a 100-bedded hospital. There are 400-bedded hospitals in Uttar Pradesh and multi-specialty hospitals. Not one of the hospitals was set up before 1990. Punjab is home to hospitals. Go to any Ambedkar statue in any city of Punjab, stand there for some time, befriend them, and if I am there, some primary school teacher will recognize me, and then ask them, can you take us to a few Dalit-owned hospitals? Why not, sir? Come with me. In a small town like Phagwara, there are 7 Dalit-owned hospitals. So, as economy relaxes, opens up more, as license system goes, Dalits, first timers are likely to benefit, and that include Dalits as well. There are Dalits in Delhi, for instance, all post-economic reforms. There is a Dalit family that has a BMW, that has a Mercedes, that has a Jaguar. There is a Dalit family that in Delhi that bought 2 Mercedes on a single day. And there is a Dalit man in Hapur, he has that big 15-18 lakh rupees bike. In our own lifetime, bicycle coming to a Dalit hamlet was a big news. Relatives would come to see that cycle. There would be some puja, some kind of welcome rituals for that bicycle. That is the story of my own life. And I can tell you, Professor Suraj, my next book, the book I am writing now, Dalit Capitalism, a self-respect movement. I have picked up 25 Dalit professors.
Okay.
When I say professors, that means not assistant professor, not associate, but full-fledged professors from Tamil Nadu, Kerala to Jammu and Kashmir to Bengal. I am asking one question. Was rupees 10 note exchangeable in your childhood? Barring one, answer is no, no, no. Could Dalits identify rupees 1, 2, 5? No, 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 very few, some. Did Dalit women wear golden jubilee? No, no, no. One or two people say yes. What was the most likely currency in Dalit homes? Paper currency or coins? Coins. Is this by design that Dalits should not access cash? There is at least one evidence. Manusmriti clearly says Sudras and Atisudras or Antajas cannot accumulate wealth, you all know. The Manusmriti prevents Dalits from acquiring gold and silver, new cloths. So there is a theory behind it, and there is a reality behind it. So was there some kind of economic sanctions against Dalits for thousands of years? And now I see Dalit grooms in villages in their weddings wearing headgear with the 2,000 rupees notes hanging all around. So for the first time, I am seeing Dalits playing with cash. It is inadequate. It is not enough. It is not a huge phenomena. But compared to my childhood, a revolution has occurred. In particular, in terms of business, post 1990 economic reforms, I have evidence to show that go to any city, any Ambedkar statue, and you will find Dalit businesses in the city. But they are not billionaires. That's the challenge. They are not 100 crore, they are not 50 crore. There are some 50 crore, 100 crore. Ratibhai Makwana's turnover is 1,200 crore a year. And his brother's turnover is also some 300 crore. And Professor Arun would tell you how big Ashok Khare is in Navi Mumbai. So there are good number of such examples that these examples became a reality only after economic reforms.
So what you are suggesting, I think what we can do is we can maybe take that question, because you're basically looking at society through an empirical structure and try to map out its change, how it has happened over just one generation, when it was lack of access to now owning up certain asset. And I think that kind of merges into me thinking about Nag's your own story, right? I mean, coming from Andhra Pradesh, went to IIM Calcutta. I mean, there is a certain story, and now a very successful entrepreneur, and of that you belong to the Dalit community, and many Dalit women who want to do business don't have much icons to look up to. And so your story will be very inspirational. So my two-part question is, A, why do you thought of business as an option and not doing your regular job, 9 to 5, Air India or any other job? And two, do you think caste really matters when we are engaging with finance or capital? You are mute.
First thing is, I always wanted to be a businesswoman or entrepreneur. So looking back, when I was in engineering, So I asked a professor whether I can make something. I mean, I had a couple of equipment, like I purchased a motor and I wanted to make something out of it. But, I do not know how to go about that. But when I went to IIM, and there I was exposed to this business and management and other things. So I thought, like, from that day onwards, from the time that I graduated, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I got into Indian Airlines and went into this bureaucracy, and it was okay. I'm getting a good salary and everything, but it's not a happy life. You know, it's pretty much a stagnant career. You get your paycheck, and a lot of other things are also there. So, but one thing is, US has a lot of opportunities. Once I came here, I have seen that anybody can start a business and explore the opportunities here and can make a business, start a business, get loans, get financing, everything. So I actually, when I was in India, I was in customs in Indian Airlines. So customs, there was a problem. I could see one business opportunity there. So where there's one particular area that could have become a business. But leaving the job, and it's something that I couldn't take a chance. And moreover, it needs finances. I don't think I have that much money to create a business over there. But it is different. With $100, you can open a company. You can start from some idea, take an idea, and then get some funding, apply to grants and things like that. So here it is very easy. So that is one thing. Suraj, what was your second question?
I wanted to say, ask, because you have worked in multi kind of national space,
Right.
also in the modern tech industry, and so the
Mhm.
relevance of caste, because that's kind of one of the questions, especially being a woman, that to belong
Right.
to the caste. How was it?
Yeah. I mean, I started business here in US, so I haven't experienced much discrimination as such back home because I was not having business. And but I'm in a pretty cool job. But I do, like, I was not given a promotion even though I got an outstanding certificate. So that may be a quite a bit of, there is a kind of like caste probably played a role in that. But coming here, it's totally a different thing. Like, you have opportunities everywhere, and the discrimination I might face more here as a woman than a caste. But caste also plays, the caste works in a very different way. I was talking to Nishkam too. Here, among Telugus, IT is dominated by Telugu people largely. And so, regarding that sector, what I can say is there are 3, 4 dominant castes are there among Telugu people. So, primarily, you see companies or people from those dominant castes. So, there are plenty of them. So, they have their own groups. Even WhatsApp made everything easy. So, they can form groups, they can exchange opportunities, they can do business among themselves, they can pass on leads and all that. And these people are from privileged families, even back home, educated people. So what I see is there are kind of silos, groups here. They formed as groups. You can see 3, 4 dominant groups here, and they are have, I mean, taken advantage of the opportunities here. And you see most of them like being rich here and having, I mean, materially and in every ways. So I find here more not exactly discriminated, but discriminated in a different way.
Right.
In the sense, there are groups here.
Hmm.
So here I come from a small community. I have small number of people, but we do exchange our opportunities in all these groups. So that makes, we can give some credit to our community there. But here, more than discrimination, you have groups. People form quickly groups here. They exchange everything. Yeah, and they develop. They are already at a better platform, so it becomes easy for them to even go further. So, but we are small in number, and so that actually puts us in a difficult or different parameter. So I do not find a discrimination as such, but definitely I do not have that many leads because it's a small group. But I feel as a woman, I may be disadvantaged. But I'm also at a better position right now because I have taken this Women Business Enterprise certification I have. So that gives me access to little more like government contracts or some more capital. I got very easily capital once or a couple of times and I paid off too. So
That's
that is also one good about being a woman. But the thing is, if we talk about caste in business, the caste works in a very different way here. That is what I observed.
right. I mean, I think this really, I was talking to a friend in New
Uh-huh.
Jersey, who is an
Okay.
entrepreneur, and he's a Dalit, but he has partners who are from different castes, mostly dominant castes,
Okay.
and he told me that when they apply for government contracts, they register themselves under the minority business
Correct.
group.
Mm-hmm.
And while the same guy benefits from the affirmative action policies, evening goes and tweets about against reservation. So we kind of see that kind of paradox
Mm-hmm.
coming around. And so Arun, I
Right.
want to take this to you. I mean, I have seen you, and not only me, many people who have known about your work have followed you. And it just so happened I was in Paris a few years ago. You had delivered a keynote there on business and the opportunities for Dalits at the Ambedkar International Conference. And they were very proud. The host were like showing me your speech, and I read that. And obviously, there've been much of you are not just a businessman. So you are a multi-crore owning business company owning CEO, but also someone who has dipped his toes in almost every other waters of be it social, be it political, and other kind of avenues. Now, there is a adage that is shared that business can only Brahmin Banyas do or Jains do. Dalits or the OBCs, they should only serve or they should only work. How do you think you, coming from the background you are, went to IIM Calcutta, and then saw yourself as merging into a business enterprise? Didn't you think that, oh, Dalits never did business? Or maybe it's wrong. Dalits always did business. We just didn't knew about them.
Uh, Basically, in my personal experience, I have never had any discrimination kind of a thing since my childhood. My father was a person who had joined Defense Accounts Department, and we had traveled across India. Now, if you look at the caste discrimination aspect, right, there are markers, and those markers belong to a particular locality. So, for example, if I'm in Maharashtra and in Vidarbha, everybody will know what Khobragade stands for. Probably in Western Maharashtra, Mumbai Marathi person cannot make out what Khobragade stands for. It's a marker. It's a caste marker, right? So if my father was transferred in Gujarat, so Gujarat, my identity was a Marathi person. It was not a Marathi Mahar kind of a person. So I didn't know of my caste or anything till I almost came to my 9th standard in the Indian education system. So not knowing about my caste and about being Dalit, never gave me any complex, whether inferiority or superiority complex. My complexes came from where I stood in the class, how I competed within the school, and what my standing was in the school and the cohort that was in and around me. So that thought never came in, and probably that carried through. Like Max said, post IIM Cal, right? I had to work to raise the capital. Now, so capital for my businesses. So that's the amount of time that I had to spend post my education and post my MBA. Why I wanted to become an entrepreneur? Because it gave me freedom of time, so that I can utilize the time the way I wanted. And of course, I wanted to do something for the Dalit community in terms of the youth that I could see around me. So that was my perspective in getting into entrepreneurship. And also, I thought that in a job there is a retirement age stood out, that 50 or 60, whatever it is. So I said, if I enter into entrepreneurship at 50, I would be continuing beyond 60 also. There would be a sense of investment and income, and I would have a good life supported by the entrepreneurship. So that was my whole story. It was not whether the Dalit can enter entrepreneurship or not, and whether Dalits as a community earlier were an entrepreneur community or not. Having said that, in the last decade or so, when I have been associated with entrepreneurship amongst Dalit, 3-4 societal norms or socio-economic structures that have come to that I have understood, and I have become a kind of a foundation for the work that I do along with Chandrabhan Prasad ji, or in terms of my ideological perspective. There are 3 pillars when we talk about Dalits in business. One is obviously the entrepreneurship aspect, right? Dalits as entrepreneurs. Second is Dalits as employees of corporate India. And third pillar that I look at as a Dalit as investors or equity holders in corporate India. Now, if you look at these 3 dimensions, right, and if you look at the affirmative action program across the globe, the basic, the foremost being the US affirmative action, second being the South African VE program, and third is that Malaysian Bhumiputra program. In this 3 program, these are the 3 pillars in one way or other. So if you look at Dalits as entrepreneurs, 90% of Dalits as an entrepreneur are self-employed, right? That is a self-employment mechanism. Entrepreneurship is a self-employment mechanism for them. Now, why is it so? The major problem is obviously of access to capital, both the legacy capital as well as the new capital. The legacy capital, which is the capital or the debt through banking system, demands collateral in India, right? And Dalit community holds their what should I say, their properties and their capital in a non-legal format. So that, for example, if they have a house, then they won't have papers for the house, for which they can then go and get a collateral against them. It would be a hamlet or something on a, it would be an unauthorized kind of a dwelling, so which cannot be put up as collateral. Or if they are doing small businesses, like if they are running a auto rickshaw, or they are a pan dweller shop or something like that, then they won't have those paper which will specify their income. They won't be doing the ITR, income tax returns and all those things, which can be shown to a financial institution and against which a capital can be raised. So since the ownership of capital amongst Dalits is in a defective format, raising capital becomes an issue. So for an in the entrepreneurship perspective, one thing has to be clear that more than 90% of Dalit entrepreneurs are doing entrepreneurship as part of their self-employment. If you come to the Dalits as employees in corporate India, in the new age businesses, which is basically IT and IT enabled services, if you look at it from the late 90s to late to 2000s, so about from 95, 96 to 2010, admission into the ITES services businesses as an employee was much more easier for Dalit, or rather on an equal stature for a Dalit graduate. Post 2000, around 7-8, post 2007-8, discrimination has started coming in. It is not a direct discrimination, but what has happened is post 2005, the recruitment process has changed. From 90 and 95 onward, it was a kind of a campus recruitment, which was the major driver for employment for these IT and IT enabled services. Post 2005, it has become a referral recruitment service. So if I am working in, say, TCS, then I can refer my friend as a prospective employee, and the company will take my friend or my referral as a employee. Now, majority of employees in this IT companies come from a particular background, and their friends and relatives also come from that particular background. So referral system has started acting as a filter for the Dalit getting into IT enabled services. And why I'm talking about IT enabled services, because as of date, that sector is the largest employer in the in the services sector. In the manufacturing sector, employment becomes a difficult part because in the earlier structure, right? So what has happened is the jump starting or the support to a Dalit youth from graduating from a skilled labor to a skilled professional is a difficult aspect. So for example, if you look at it, the Nai, the barber, right? It is a community specified skill set, right? There is a barber community, the Nai community, which is performing that particular act. And it can be looked as an enterprise. So you have a Nai dukan in and across where 2-3 Nais barbers will cut up. But none of these Nais or barber have been able to create a chain of salon, right? Like say Habib's or any other chain that you find in India. So they have not been able to develop their skill set into a professional business kind of a quality. And this has been a problematic sense. Right. If you look at the third pillar in terms of Dalits ownership into corporate India, it's almost negligible. And why is this segment important is because if you have a say or you are even a minority shareholder in any corporate entity, then in the governance principle, you can seek for affirmative action in that particular corporate, right? You can ask for, or you can ask questions in terms of what is the percentage of Dalit vendors of your total vendor graph? What is the percentage of Dalit employees in your employment structure? So these kind of questions can be asked. So when we talk of Dalits in business, most of the time we get restricted as an entrepreneur or as an employee. We also have to start looking at it from the equity ownership or the stakeholder ownership of the entire corporate India. And that's where we see it's it's negligible.
Right. And I think the kind of work you have been doing with Chandrabhan and few others is kind of, we'll come back to that. Now what we'll do is I'll invite you to, all three of you, to comment in short so we get as many as questions. So Brother Chandravan, to you, your idea of Dalit enterprise, Dalit capitalism, are you just making this out of the cloud, or do you think there is money? Do you think we have money? Do you think the Dalit community, let's just talk about employees. How much money do you think they have? And what is the potential of that?
Let me put 2-3 points across. There is a discrimination. Your topic is caste and business. That discrimination is structured. It is in the caste order. For instance, Dalits are not like Baniyas. A Dalit becomes entrepreneur by some incident. He becomes somewhat richer, but his family, his caste, his relatives do not have funds where he can fall back. It is in the structure. Further, there are in Faridabad, there are 7-8 Dalit auto parts maker. Professor Arun knows them, he has visited them. If these guys stop production of critical auto parts, Tata trucks will stop, the factory will stop, because they produce some very critical parts. So, but they don't have that cultural access to the Tata Motors or Leyland or all these Toyota. There are Dalits making parts for Toyota. So it is into the structure, because Dalits are first timers, they don't have cultural capital. Cultural capital comes from caste, and there is no big money. So they remain vendors to somebody. Very few can come out and become supplier to the end user. So this is one problem. The second is, when we ask for fund, every government is willing to give funds to Dalits, but not the market. Tell us the size of Indian Army and tell us who makes the shoes for Indian armies. But Dalit shoe makers in Agra don't have direct access to Government of India's purchase departments. Government of India buys goods and services worth billions of dollars. We ask for that. They say, take funds. So if you don't have market,
that's right.
Nageshwari ji is an entrepreneur. If she doesn't have market, what will she do with even $1 billion if she gets, if she doesn't have market? So Dalits face this problem as a structural problem, and that structure is the caste structure. And since you are at Harvard, and seriously speaking, you are a serious N material. Serious N material. We have to confront truth and respond to that. One of the problems I face wherever I go for lectures, Mr. Prasad, how many Dalits can become capitalists? Right? My answer is, if there is only one post of the President of India, just because there is only one post, Dalits should not aspire for that. There is only one Prime Minister's post in India. Because there is only one post, Dalits should not aspire for that. And how many Dalits become IAS every year? 15, 16. Just because there are few IAS positions, should not Dalits aspire for that? Just there is only one head of department in Delhi University. Recently, there was a huge struggle because a Dalit was in the line to become head of department in Hindi. It was delayed for 8 months, and Dalits had to fight Dharna, Pradarshan, Morcha, वगैरह. So just because there is only one head of department in Delhi University in Hindi department, should not Dalit aspire for?
I think what you were mentioning about which I will very quickly come to, Nageshwari, but just to, how much wealth does or income does Indian employees who are belonging to the Dalit community contribute, or how much do they make? Do you have any number? I think you had.
Adi Dalit Foundation, where Professor Arun is also part of that. Adi Dalit Foundation is a emerging Dalit think tank.
Okay.
And Adi Foundation has calculated income of government officers and employees, and it comes roughly at $50 billion. If you Google the GDP of 193 or so nations, if Dalit were to be a nation, they would be 79th biggest nation in the world in terms of GDP.
Hmm.
But Dalits do not have control over their own money. Their purchasing, their banking, everything is outside Dalit world. So this huge money that Dalits generate annually,
Mhm.
it is like a flood water. It ultimately goes in some nala, in some river, in some lake. That's a big challenge for the Dalit middle class. How to control there is no Dalit bank, there is no Dalit insurance companies. All these questions have to be addressed by the uh, Dalit middle class,
Right.
and access to market is key to Dalits joining the club of billionaires and millionaires and all those things.
I think what we hear is in a way that's there is at one point there was procurement demand, but now what Chandrabhan is arguing basically we need access to market. That's the kind of a key. Nagesh, where you have been in a way you see how, for example, Black Lives Matter or how American corporate culture kind of has a strict affirmative action for people from not only what they call people, person of color, to kind of compensate that kind of steam of thought. What do you think? Does that work? And would that work in India? Kind of accessing or creating reservations or affirmative action in private sector in India?
Affirmative action here, there are so many categories. See, there are minority reservation, women-owned reservation, socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged, hub zone, veteran. So, I mean, if I start saying how many reservations exist, it is endless. At least there are 10, 15 reservations are there. See, for very small business, like let's say if I compare, it is like a pawn shop or tea stall in India. But very small business also has a reservation. So if you take the affirmative action in business here, there are like 10, 15 categories. You'll be very surprised. It is not just the major categories that are there in India, 4, 5 categories. Here there are 10, 15. So everybody can have a piece of the pie. Here, the thing is, at 2, 3 decades back, there was a survey done. What they have figured is the small business companies employ more than all the big companies together. So government started thinking in a different way. So government said that the small businesses, encouraging people to be entrepreneurs is going to create more jobs and build the economy. So what they have started doing is they started bringing up, opportunities by creating less competition among categories. So as a woman, I can compete for opportunities in government, which are totally set aside for women business enterprises. Similarly, things that are set aside for minority, set aside for women small businesses. So there are so many. So, I mean, I'm definitely glad that I'm in a country where there are opportunities are more, but also the country believes that the small businesses employ more people. So government could figure out that, okay, if we encourage these small companies and they will be adding more jobs to the economy, which is ultimately, it's going to increase the GDP of the entire country. See, these people think in a very different angle. So put in and give loans to people. As a woman owned, you won't believe, in 2001, a lady came to my office. She's from Chase Bank, sorry, US Bank. She said, we are we have a program right now. We are encouraging women entrepreneurs. I can give a loan to you. So she took a one-page application from me, like which indicates my company EIN and details and basic details, my revenue. Revenue wasn't more than 2 million at the time for the company. And I got 100K. And 100K, I hired people and I paid off in taxes, and I created jobs. So it is good for the country. Country knows how to produce entrepreneurs and how to increase jobs. So here the opportunities or the capitalism works in a very different way.
Right.
In the sense that they want to increase the GDP, increase jobs, increase economy. See, that's how US became a dominant country,
So
technically, economically, in every way.
I think, I think Nageswaran, sorry to cut you. I think because Nishkam is here, I just want to kind of get Arun's final point before
Okay,
we do that.
sure.
But basically, Arun, what Nageswari said and what you were saying also about, first is the Pierre Bourdieu's concept of culture and social capital is what works. But also what she's saying is actually by employing more and getting more capital or more resources of people belonging to minority communities is actually contributing more to the economy and to the overall development. Now, people don't have that idea. A very quick response from you. How do you envisage, because I know you have been fighting for this private reservation private sector, but also you go beyond that. Do you have a very quick response to
Suraj, can I say something?
Sure.
1 minute?
Sure.
So what I have done right now is, I have seen all of you, you're trying to do something and bringing together people and bringing awareness. I keep creating some applications and IT products and things like that. So I have decided to provide business to our people instead of I tend to talk to several companies and take the lowest quote and give it to whoever lowest and then the best quote, and I tend to give business to offshore companies. But I decided, I changed my mind. Let me give the opportunities to Dalit community instead of to somebody else. So I'm working with a company.
Right.
So this is one way we can, exchange opportunities and improve each other.
Right.
So,
Before we go ahead, I also want to be conscientious of our time and make sure we get some Q&A
Right.
in before we end. So we have about like 10 minutes. So just like putting it to you, Suraj.
Right.
How you want to proceed?
So Arun, I think what I will do is I was already seeing before questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of also club some of these questions. And so see, one of the things is, can we make Dalit capitalists as a product of reservations? Is it possible? Is it even feasible? Right? And you must be getting a lot of that. So I think Uday Ratna has asked similar type of question, and so I want to have your response to kind of what Nageshwari also said. Would reservation work if at all we are trying to do, and what is the larger objective of it?
You are asking about reservation in private sector, right?
Yeah.
See, this is the similar question that was asked when Constitution provided reservation in 1958 in the government sector, right? Now, since Baba Saheb was in the drafting committee, why didn't he say right there reservation in all enterprises? He could have very well written there, right? That any economic activity that takes place will have a reservation. It was for a very simple reason that when the Constitution was being written, India's economy, more than 75% was in the government domain, right? Over the period of time, and especially after 90, the scales have changed, that private sector has become a dominant portion, has a dominant portion of the Indian economy. Now, if and no private sector is built on 100% private capital. Right. There is a public capital involved in one way or other, and the national or the nation's resources are being used by the private enterprise in terms of power, utility, and all those factors. So there is no absolute private property kind of a thing in the enterprise segment. Since there is a bias involved in recruitment process and there is a filter involved in the recruitment process, what we are saying is you disable those biases and the filters that have been appointed, which dissuade Dalits entry into the private sector. So what we are asking, is there a positive discrimination kind of a thing? A step kind of a below that, you remove the biases. Our people are on their own, they can approach. And whether there are biases or not, that has been shown with various studies that had been done by Professor Thorak, Professor Jodhka. Their study has shown that there are biases in the recruitment processes in the private sector. There is a very well-known study on this factor. What Chandrabhanji was saying in terms of the amount of money that Dalit middle class owns, almost 99% of that ownership is because of the reservation that the Dalits got into the government job. So all these people that Chandrabhanji had formed the figure on are the government employees, basis of that. So why can't similar capital accumulation and generation take place through the private sector employment scenario? So yes, if there is a reservation, there will be a capital accumulation amongst the employees, similar to what has taken place because of employment in the government sector.
So I think, Brother Chandrabhan, you really gave a staggering number. Your think tank Adi Dalit Foundation has really thought about 40, 50 billion. I mean, Malcolm X and even the people within here were advocating for an independent, kind of intra-economy of Black people. They say, we don't want to fund and support our oppressors, because eventually they're going to do the same kind of predatory lending and predatory businesses and kind of damage the community. And it was done. And what you're saying is a huge, massive number. People might not even know that this exists, right? So now the question is, somebody's asking, actually there is a question here raised, and it is asked, directed at you. What is the role of Dalit capitalism through the Dicky that you were part of?
Well, let me take half a minute on a subject because I want to use this opportunity.
Okay.
Dalit middle class does not prefer businesses for their children. Those into businesses, the Dalit businesses complain that we face problem during matrimony. We are not preferred. Even if we have a small BMW car and we employ 50 people, if there is a railway ticket collector, he is favored over my son or my daughter. And you will be surprised to know, and you will feel sad, the children of Dalit civil servants try to become civil servants. How long? The maximum age for others is 32 years. What is the maximum age for Dalits and Adivasis? 37 years. Come over to Delhi and visit Mukherjee Nagar and Karol Bagh. Thousands and thousands of children coming from Dalit middle class parents write civil service till the age of 37. Only 150 will get every year. Where do the guys who fail, where do they go? They go to state civil service. What is the age limit? In Uttar Pradesh, for instance, 43 years. So thousands and thousands of Dalit youth belonging to Dalit middle class, in particular Dalit civil servants, try for civil service till the age of 43. So business is not fashionable amongst our community, and there is a Dalit there is a Dalit engineering graduate in Bangalore. He was rejected 24 times by parents of prospective brides, because he was not, he was a businessman, he was not an officer. So this I wanted to say, that Dalit middle class should also look into themselves, as why for 150 civil service job, 50 lakh children continue writing year after year till the age of 43.
Mm-hmm.
Your other question, can you repeat the original question?
It was about very brief now, because we are really rushing after time. We're going to get as many questions. So I just want a quick response. There was a question raised about the role of Dalit capitalism and how has Dickey helped or not helped, that you were part of.
To begin with, I'll take very few seconds.
Few seconds, yes, that's good.
Capitalism is my personal dream. I want to see hundreds of Dalits becoming employers of caste Hindus.
Absolutely.
That's my personal interest,
Yeah.
for which I am working.
Bolo Jai Bhim.
Okay.
we have Dax, we have literally 3 minutes, and I want to
Okay.
bring a question, and I want you to kind of club your final remarks on that as well.
Okay, sure.
Just like on that note, we can go ahead by like a couple of minutes, if that's what it takes to. like,
Okay.
I
bring
want
the
to,
question.
I have something to say. I mean, please continue.
Yeah, next. First, take the question and then merge that. Okay. So
Okay, sure.
people have been furiously documenting their questions. So the question is being sent is, how will how will entrepreneurship flourish, and if it flourishes, how will it address caste? Right? I mean, it's kind of repeating the same question, because you see, Ashutosh Tirke says Baniyas, Marwadis, and Jains have established networks, which helps them in all sorts of situations, and access market. The question, Dalits don't have that. And so when we are proposing that, and then you had also said, you are like trying to create this kind of a in its own incubation, if you will. So how do you respond to that?
So here is the thing, just a little bit of 10 seconds of.
Okay.
So what I wanted to say is, here diversity and inclusion is encouraged by every company, government and private. So I became vendors to a private company because I'm a diverse, like I'm a woman business owner, as well as I am from a minority community. Minority is less in number here. Minorities, the concept of minority is different in India. So, I mean, coming back to this one, diversity and inclusion is encouraged by every company, private, public, and all sorts of things. That is how every community, every person gets a chance to be an entrepreneur, to be able to access capital. So all that is. But one thing I have observed, the Indian dominant caste here are, they're forming groups, they're exchanging opportunities. So I thought like that is one way of starting this one and encouraging people. So I have a business here, and I'm forming groups, a kind of one group I formed for US entrepreneurs. And another thing is I want to have Indian businesses, a WhatsApp group or a couple of WhatsApp groups where we can exchange businesses, ideas and opportunities, leads and everything. So definitely, if Indian companies have both private and public, if they encourage diversity and inclusion, reservation, if we can remove it and then make it kind of diversity and inclusion based, if we can sell that point to companies, maybe they'll change. because the more the number, the better. Isn't it? Even for businesses. Another thing I want to say is,
Sure.
see the reservations that are happening right now. So they are, I feel, kind of coming to a point where they become disadvantaged to Dalit community, because most of the reservations are grabbed by the elite population of Dalit community. So just a bulk of the portion, people are left in the same way. They are. So reservations are really coming to a point where they are in a reverse direction. But if we can make a case to private companies instead of a reservation, like a diversity and inclusion, the way these people make a case.
All right. I think this is great. Fantastic. Arun,
Okay.
your response. Um, there's a question here by Aniket as well as Pankaj, and how do you want us to do the business, especially in private sector and talking about diversity, inclusion, and trying to increase equity. We need to think about corporate as a model. But when the structure is against you, do you have any suggestive pointers as a
Yeah,
closing
first,
remark?
yeah. First and foremost, the technological advancement that has taken place in last decade has been able to crumble all the uh, what should we call it, the ancestral benefits that the so-called business community had been deriving till now. For example, market location, where your shop was set up earlier, was a huge incentive in terms of doing businesses. If you go to any city, any town, there is a marketplace, and if you want to occupy a position or a shop in that particular marketplace, it was not possible earlier because of given your caste and all those things that were real. Even if you had money, you could not go and buy the shop there. Now, with the advent of technology, it hardly matters whether you have a physical infrastructure in the terms of shop or not. If you are on the net, and if you are able to sell if your product is good, you are able to sell it across the globe, irrespective of where you are located. So with the advent of technology, those things, those natural advantages that certain community has had, those are diminishing. The point that is very important, and where we should the entire middle class Dalit should start thinking in terms of now, is how do we get the capital and provide the capital for the people who want to do businesses among Dalit community. One of the things that some of us are trying to do is trying to create a social impact fund. Hopefully, by the end of this year, the governing body, SEBI, Securities and Securities Board of India, Securities Exchange Board of India, would be giving the permission to set up this alternate investment fund, which will be kind of a social impact capital. And the capital, the base capital that has to be raised for this alternative investment fund can come from across the globe. There are various social impact investors which are situated across the globe, say in US, in Europe, and all other parts. We can access them and bring the capital into this alternative investment fund and try to provide capital to the Dalit community entrepreneurs who want to do business. And once you create a unicorn from the Dalit community, once you create a big business from Dalit community, once you try to look at it from the goal of Chandrabhan Prasad, that having 100 billionaires or millionaires, once those kind of things will create, then the capital which is available across the globe can be accessed and will come to you easily. Today, for example, the entire risk capital that is being deployed in this country, right, is coming from across the globe. It's not coming from within the community, Marwari community or Bania community. It's hardly any percentage of that risk capital. The entire venture fund, the angel investing, or so-called other modes of risk capital that is coming to India is coming from across its border. For example, now what you were talking about, the Paris Convention, where in the Ambedkar International, during that Ambedkar International missions, I was in dialogue with various Sikh community people from Canada. Now, Canada has got the biggest infrastructure in terms of providing pension funds. And pension funds are investing into India, into its infrastructure and businesses in a big way. So from 2014 onwards, my linkages with the Canadian Sikh people has diminished a bit. But we can, once this structure that what we are talking about is there, then we can access those pension funds and get the fund. So money, so with the advent of technology, with the advent of newer modes of funding that are available, I think those traditional disadvantages that the Dalit community faced for creating businesses are no more there.
I think what this session really did was really provide much guidance, critique, offer inside perspective, expert analysis. People from different diversities and vocations really came and really pulled out the rainbow of what businesses, but also look through a critical lens of caste. I think such kind of conversations really need to happen more often, so people take notes, think about it more creatively, and really assess how the problem is going to go. We really wanted to hear the speakers because we don't have a format, so we gave them extended time so much of the knowledge could be grasped, because I think this is probably the first time people must be listening to such kind of conversations. So I think it's great. Thanks to our panel chair, Nishkam, for pulling this together, and also to the Harvard India Conference for convening this. I think, and I hope such kind of conversations transcend beyond the virtual space. Nishkam, over to you.
Yeah, I'll just take a minute to introduce what we have lined up for you after this as well. So yeah, we have an exciting lineup for the rest of the India conference, including a couple of panels which are starting maybe a couple of minutes from now. So I would invite all of you to go ahead and head over to some of those. Well, I would also, and as we are concluding, I would like to express our sincerest gratitude to our panelists, Mr. Chandrapawan Prasad, Mr. Arun Khoprakade, and Ms. Nageshwari Cherakonda. Thank you for your time and for sharing your thoughts on this very important subject. And a big thank you to our moderator, Dr. Suraj Jengri, for putting so much thought, preparation into helping us uncover all sides of a fairly contentious topic. And finally, thank you to our audiences from India, the US, and elsewhere who tuned into our event and asked probing questions. We have a lot of exciting sessions, as I just posted a link to, and we hope we'll see you again. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Nishkam. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Ciao.